I'm Carl King, and this is the Carl King Podcast, where we learn about music, filmmaking, and the other creative arts. To support this podcast, head over to patreon.com/Carl King and join for just $1 or $5 per month. Or send a tip through PayPal or Venmo to username Carl Kingdom. Special thank you to my Illusionist $51 level patrons, both Hank Howard III and Chuabaoed. Quick shout out to my music endorsements, Vienna Symphonic Library, Fractal Audio, Ernie Ball Strings, Toontrack, and Millennia Media. Now let's get this episode beginned. Hello, very good friends of Carl King. It's raining here outside Plosive Central Studio B, but we are feeling good, and I will explain why. Two little bits of news, and then we will get beginned. Number one, I have fallen into the Huberman rabbit hole, and I'm referring to Andrew Huberman, PhD, of the Huberman Lab podcast. He's a neuroscientist and professor of neurobiology at Stanford and wears a large wristwatch. So for the past week, I have been waking up at 6 a.m. and walking a couple of miles in order to suck natural sunlight into my eyeball neurons. And also taking cold showers. Have any of you listeners tried this lately? Well, waking up early has been a huge change for me, as I have never been a quote-unquote morning person. I've also been going to bed early and limiting my light exposure in the evening. I've installed little dim red lights all over my house that automatically turn on when it gets dark. So it kind of looks like I'm in an old-fashioned film developing lab. And so far, I feel a heck of a lot better. I'm sure Chris Higgins has something to say about that. If you want to be like me and listen to the Huberman Lab podcast, it is available on the internet. And I will provide a link to the internet in the show notes. Second bit of news, I have uploaded a private video for Patreon members only, Sir Millard Mulch Live in Sarasota, 1999. Where I performed a set of music at a place called The Light Painter. The camcorder audio is terrible and distorted, and whoever filmed it was getting creative with the camera angles and built-in effects. I suspect they were bored by the music. It's a 36-minute show, and my three-piece Sir Millard Mulch Band played 10 songs, including Broccoli, and The Boy with the Perfectly Square Butthole. So join my Patreon to check that out. Now, right now, today, we have a special episode in a different format. And I am calling that format, Why I Hate This Song. I hate this song, I hate. Can we turn it off now and check out something else and I'll listen to it all day long? I hate this song, I hate this. The idea wasn't bad, but now I'm super sad because they did it all fucking wrong. Last week I asked my listeners to submit their least favorite song. I gave priority to my Patreon members and then selected 10 songs most worthy of examination. And I will be covering them in this special episode. By the way, that theme song you just heard is a song called I Hate This Song by me, and it was my Patreon-only song of the month for October. And Patreon members at the $5 level and up can get it as a 24/48 WAV file plus alternate mixes. Now, before we get into examining these songs, I want to make some overall observations. First of all, I noticed some common denominators. Many of these songs have just one tempo, one instrumentation, and one chord progression throughout. Most of them have 3 to 4 chords. One of them has only 2 chords. And one of them has no chords. In short, they are easy to remember and repetitive. But that's not something in itself that makes a song bad or even subjectively annoying as heck, because repetition is essential to pop music and almost all music, unless it was written intentionally to not repeat, in which case it is called through composed. Second, none of the songs submitted are instrumental. Now, isn't that interesting? It's safe to say that most often, it's the vocals that listeners can't stand. So I believe in all of these examples that if the singer was removed from the song, and it was originally released that way, without vocals, it would not have the same irritating effect. And here is why. Vocalists tend to project a feeling of confidence and feeling good about themselves, or some other emotional content that the listener just can't bring themselves to buy into. So there's this mismatch between what the performer is telling the listener to feel and what the listener is willing to feel. As a result, we call it cheesy. Now, I believe that deep down, it's because we are threatened by it. And my argument is that it is rarely the music's fault. Third, we form associations between songs and other things. A piece of music will immediately remind us of people and places we might not like. It happens more often than we are willing to admit, and it creates a prejudice towards what is nothing but a collection of harmless notes. For example, my own personal least favorite song might be Cumbersome by Seven Mary Three. And I can tell you that I used to get very agitated by it, because it makes me think of white guys who sing with a deep southern accent and try to sound bluesy and macho. And I grew up in Florida surrounded by people who embodied those traits. I'm sure it's no coincidence Seven Mary Three actually made it big out of Orlando, Florida. So the song didn't need to travel all that far to get on my nerves. But here's my advice. Instead of getting mad and letting some silly music raise your cortisol levels, it's far healthier to simply laugh at music you think is bad, as if it's a parody. Fourth, I want to point out that I had no negative physiological reaction to any of these songs. Now, 10 years ago, I would have had an emotional meltdown over making this episode. Instead, it was actually a lot of fun to dissect this music. It brought me back to the days of theory classes and harmonic analysis. And there were even a couple of musical ideas that caught my attention and challenged me. I had to go grab my PRS SE24 and solve those puzzles. So even if you dislike a song, I recommend learning it. And fifth, while working through this whole thing, I came up with something that I am calling the Ween test. Meaning, would I enjoy this song if someone told me it was Ween, or if Ween covered it? Now, I use Ween as an example because they regularly cross the line back and forth between making music that is bad on purpose and brilliant on purpose. And part of my enjoyment of Ween is figuring out which is which. And finally, there were so many good song submissions. So I want to thank everyone who sent them in. I will definitely save them for a future Why I Hate This Song episode. Now, with those points out of the way, let's start. First up, we have Achy Breaky Heart by Billy Ray Cyrus, submitted by Hank Howard III. First of all, the tempo of Achy Breaky Heart is 122 BPM, which is perfect for walking or line dancing. Now, this is a standard rock and roll song. It's in the key of A major, a good choice of key. And it only has two chords, A and E, which are the tonic and dominant chords, because that's all that tonal music needs. The lyrics are all about the protagonist giving various permissions to the listener. He or she can tell lots of people various things. The people named include Billy Ray Cyrus's mom, his aunt, a dog, and also his fingers. But he requires that you don't tell his heart because it might blow up and kill this man. Achy Breaky Heart was originally written in 1990 by Don Von Tress and released on the Marcy Brothers album in 1991. But then the very next year, Billy Ray Cyrus covered it. Well, he didn't let much time pass, did he? He just grabbed it right up and made it his own massive hit. And here's some more good news. Billy Ray Cyrus reworked the song in 2017 at a slower tempo, approximately 113. Now, I tried line dancing to it at that tempo, but I injured my skeleton in 3 places. I don't think this song has much to like or dislike about it. So, why does everyone hate it? Well, after lots of analysis, I believe I have found the answer. It's because most of us know Billy Ray Cyrus for his surreal film acting, such as starring in Mulholland Drive by David Lynch. I think the biggest complaint people have is this. They would like him to stick to acting rather than trying to start a music career, because no one likes it when famous actors try to play music. It makes us think they ran out of acting ideas. And who can argue, because Billy Ray Cyrus has starred in countless avant-garde classics like Sharknado 2, Hillbilly: The Real Story, and let's not forget his outstanding performance with Gene Simmons in Wish You Were Dead. Anyway, I would like to say thank you to Hank Howard III for hating this song. Next up, we have Use Somebody by Kings of Leon, submitted by MODIAK. The tempo of Use Somebody is approximately 67 BPM. Now, you could argue it's double that at 134 BPM, but I refuse to believe this song is faster than Billy Ray Cyrus's Achy Breaky Heart. So at 67 BPM, you would notate all of those guitar strums as 16th notes. Why not? Use Somebody is in the key of C, which is a good choice of key. It's also the most normal of all keys. Fun fact, the majority of Sir Millard Mulch songs were also written in C major, including Broccoli. The verse and chorus of this song use a sequence of 3 chords played twice. That's C, E minor, and F, and then C, E minor, and F, which would be the 1, 3, and 4 chords, followed by another sequence of 3 more chords played twice. That would be A minor, C, and F, and then again A minor, C, and F. That would be the 6, 1, and 4 chord, and those repeat approximately 75 times. Now, this is one of those songs with the whoa, whoa, whoa vocals. And this has been called the Millennial Whoop. And to me, it just sounds like a Coca-Cola commercial. Now, in the second verse, they get real clever in the rhythm section. The bass, guitar, and drums use rudimentary syncopation, and that's a musical technique invented approximately 600 years ago. And then the bridge comes out of nowhere. It goes from D major to F sharp minor, and then a B chord briefly, which doesn't lead back to C in a strong way. Now, normally for a bridge, you would move to a relative key like A minor or E minor, but they already used the heck out of those 2 chords in the verse and chorus. But you know what chord they never used in the key of C? G major, the 5 chord. The second most important chord in the key. It would have been the perfect opportunity to move to G major for a bit. Now, had I been there, I could have told them that, and they could have won either 4 Grammys or 0 Grammys. So, after the fake bridge, it's straight back into the droning C, E minor, F, with a bit of a guitar solo. Overall, I would describe this as hipster/girl music. The singer is doing that vocal fry and accent thing that girls and some men probably think is sexy. That's my best guess anyway. And it turns out that entirely without my help, this song won 3 Grammy Awards. I'd like to say thank you to MODIAK for hating this song. Up next we have Wonderful Christmas Time by Paul McCartney, submitted by Chris Higgins. Now, this song is at 95 BPM, and it starts with A B major 7 chord? Hang on, we've got jazz chords here. And those are also known as extended chords. Music theory nerds know that chord extensions are notes beyond the triad of 1, 3, and 5. Now this song is basically in the key of B major, which is a good choice of key. And in that main hook, there's a sequence of jazzy chords with some leaps in fifths, but not exactly a circle of fifths. That sequence is C sharp minor 7, which is a minor 2 chord, and then F sharp 7, the 5/7 chord, and then D sharp minor 7, the 3 chord, followed by a G sharp 7, which would be a major 6/7 chord. And then we're back to diatonic with an E major 7, which would be the 4 chord, and then we're breaking out of the key again with an A7, which would be a flat major 7, 7th chord, and then back to a B major, or B major 7th. Now remember that for later, because it's going to be important. In thinking for hours about the chorus lyrics, quote, simply having a wonderful Christmas time, unquote, I suspect this song is actually about a man who suffers from alcoholism. I imagine his wife has woken up because he's banging around the house with his drunk friends, and she asks what the heck they are doing. And he says, simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Ding dong, ding dong. And she tells him, Christmas? It's the middle of July. And the whole thing is actually pretty dark and traumatic if you look any deeper. So let's change the subject. And I'd like to say thank you to Chris Higgins for hating this song. Up next is The Christmas Shoes by NewSong, submitted by Max Stanley. Another Christmas song. Boy, do we have some real Grinches in the audience. This song was allegedly written in the year 2000 by a man named Don Koch, and I will tell you more about him later. There seems to be 2 versions of this music video. There's one from 2007, which seems to be more homemade with a squashed 4:3 interlaced aspect ratio, which is pretty low budget. And then one from 2011 with footage from the Christmas Shoes Hallmark movie, starring Rob Lowe. Oddly enough, I found the 2007 low-budget version to be far more worthy of review. So here is my diagnosis of that 2007 version. Now, part of the problem is the literal interpretation of the music video. It uses a similar style as R. Kelly's Trapped in the Closet, or maybe Weird Al's Trapped in the Drive-Thru, which was 11 minutes of monotonous exposition describing every single action, much like another song I will talk about later in this episode. Because of that, I would say that this type of storytelling is more like musical theater. The vocalist delivers with over-emotional mannerisms, and we're supposed to feel something profound from his hoarse, constricted dude voice. And if you read the comments, a lot of people sure do. But some of us only feel a profound irritation, like, why is that guy acting like that? Now, if this were a Ween song, they would take it a step further, or 1,000 steps further, towards the absurd. Their song Spinal Meningitis comes to mind here, with the lyrics, Am I gonna see God, mommy? Am I gonna die? Stinky Vaseline, mommy? Now, The Christmas Shoes is at 67 BPM, which is the optimal tempo for a ballad. And this was written in the key of G, a good choice of key. Well, actually, the first verse is in the key of G. But beginning with the first chorus, it has what's called a producer's modulation up to A major. That's a whole step up from G major. And it's called a producer's modulation because it simply jumps up rather than being set up through a series of chords. And later there's yet another producer's modulation up a whole step to B major. Of course, this represents moving up the guitar neck closer to heaven. Now the bridge has a sudden A major chord in it, and that makes it a flat 7 major chord. That's a flat VII in Roman numerals. A major chord that is a whole step down from the tonic chord. And in contrast with that F-sharp major chord, it is a nice mediant relationship. And then we get a group of children singing the chorus over a sparse accompaniment, which is supposed to sound sad. Now, Don Koch, the writer of this song, I told you I would bring him up again, is now a director of worship and music publishing at First Worship Ministry. Music publishing? Huh. Now, I might be confused, but he and his company seems to have created a mixture between a church and a record label. They seem to have put out 50 songs across 6 albums. I think you are supposed to contact him about licensing them. You can also purchase complete stem tracks, rhythm charts, and even bass rehearsal tracks, in case you wanted to do a bass cover of a song called Hope for the Ages, a multi-gen worship experience for Christmas. But be sure to have your music attorney or general counsel clear it with them first. And I'd like to say thank you to Max Stanley for hating this song. Up next, we have a song called Freaxxx, spelled Freaxxx, by a group called BrokeNSYDE, submitted by Dusty Grimm. Now, this is definitely not a Christmas song. I mean, it could become a Christmas song someday, and I wouldn't rule it out, I suppose. Now, Freaxxx takes place at 120 BPM, and that's the default tempo that probably any drum machine or DAW will be set to when you start it up, which is great because 120 BPM happens to be perfect for doing things around the house or in your garden at 120 BPM, depending on what you like to do in the garden. Now, this one is in the key of C minor, which is a good choice of key, but it doesn't appear to have any chord changes. That's right, it stays on C the entire time. The cultural costume superimposed on top of this music is something called crunkcore. It's allegedly a style of music invented by sand people in places like Albuquerque. Now, it's important to know that crunkcore is crunk hip-hop, but with screamed vocals and various Tusken Raider sounds. This group, BrokeNSYDE, is 2 high school kids, and I'm assuming they were rich kids, because no one cares about poor kids. The lyrics are about a topic, and one of the 2 kids is singing with heavy autotune set to the C minor scale. Most of the melodic variation is happening simply on accident, because when he sings a C note to flat, autotune will quantize it to B flat, and if he sings the C note to sharp, it will quantize to E flat or D. And the other kid is simply screaming every measure or so. And I didn't hear any words, I just heard a lot of blah. Although, checking the well-crafted lyrics, I think he's actually screaming the word now. The music video must have been expensive because the concept is this: a group of high school kids dancing in their mom's driveway and occasionally in front of a green screen. And I'd like to say thank you to Dusty Grimm for hating this song. Up next we have Marlins Will Soar by Scott Stapp, submitted by Derek Keller. Now, did you know that Scott Stapp is the 68th greatest heavy metal vocalist of all time? Well, all I knew was that he was a Christian known for his sex tape with Kid Rock. By the way, under the name Sir Millard Mulch, I did a cover of Creed's song Higher, and there are only 2 places you can find it at this time. First, someone put it up on YouTube, and it's also on the original Mimicry Records pressing of How to Sell the Whole Effing Universe to Everyone, or is it everybody, once and for all, available in my shop. And I think it's possibly the best song on the album. Now, let's get back on topic. Marlins Will Soar is a song about Mr. Stapp's excitement about some fish. He wrote it in 2010, and strangely enough, he has a nearly identical song on his album The Great Divide called You Will Soar from 2005. But it's probably just a coincidence, as lots of artists write songs that all sound kind of similar. It was a smart move because You Will Soar can actually be adapted to be about anyone he wants. That's right, it doesn't have to be just about fish. Scott Stapp could at any time declare that you, or even I, will soar, now or in the future. So there's plenty of soaring that can happen between now and then. This song is in the key of D major, which is a good choice of key. It's in the 6/8 time signature at about 54 BPM. And it's only a minute and a half long, but that's depending on how many times you listen to it. Over here, it came out to about 6.5 hours and a divorce. As far as the structure of the song, there's not really a verse and chorus here, so I will call it an A and a B section. The A section's progression is only 3 chords, B minor, G, and D. And that would be 6, 4, and 1. And the B section is E minor, G, and D. Folks, it looks like we have another hit song with no 5 chord. Now, if there were a 5 chord, it would have been an A major. Again, had I been there during the writing, I could have helped them out with that for a fee, because I do charge a lot to add a 5 chord. But here's what's important. The thing that makes Scott Stapp special is his mastery of the technique known as vowel modification. Like a lot of other professional vocalists, Scott Stapp turns his mouth into a tube, much like a tube you would use for feeding cockroaches to a pet reptile. Now, if you want to try this at home, I recommend doing it without the cockroaches. So what you do is you create space in your mouth, but then you press your tongue forward to fill that space. And you want a tiny opening, or lots of R. And you give everything an R sound. And vowel modification is a popular technique in singing, and it's well known that you want to make as many vowels into R's as possible. And Scott Stapp does an outstanding job of that in every song he sings on. So let's talk about that vocal melody. You might notice he employs some modal interchange on the phrase, "Come on, Marlins, make us proud." He sings a minor third over a major chord on the word us, as in make us proud, and that would be borrowing notes from the parallel minor key, or D minor, which is a very clever move. Now, here's some trivia. Did anyone here know that Scott Stapp actually had a band on Century Media with Bumblefoot called Art of Anarchy? How did that happen? They had a single called The Madness with a music video. Now, everyone go watch that because I am confused. Does anyone else notice that he barely sounds like Scott Stapp? Did someone else actually sing that one in the studio? And Scott Stapp just showed up for the music video? I'm serious. Go listen to it. Try to convince me and yourself that it's the voice of Scott Stapp, because it cannot be done. I'd like to say thank you to Derek Keller for hating this song. Up next is Friday by Rebecca Black, submitted by avid music fan Dale Turner. Now, we all have to realize Friday is not actually by Rebecca Black, as she was only 13 years old at the time. Her mom paid a company called Arc Music Factory $4,000 to make a song and music video with her, which seems like a fun thing to do when your kid is 13. Of course, no one was expecting the video to get so much attention, and that 13-year-old girl was then made fun of by pretty much the entire world. By the way, there's a short documentary by Vice about it called I Made the Most Hated Music Video Ever, in which Rebecca Black talks about her experience. And she is still making music and videos on her YouTube channel where she is known as simply Rebecca. Now let's talk about the actual nuts and bolts of this song. Non-musicians like Dale Turner will need to hang in there while I talk some serious music theory. Friday is performed at 112 BPM, and no coincidence, 112 BPM is the same tempo as Pantera's Cowboys from Hell. And this song has a strikingly similar lyrical theme, but we will get to that in just a little bit. We're in the key of B major, which is a good choice of key. And the chords are B, G sharp minor, E, and F sharp. That makes it a 1-6-4-5 progression. Some of you might know that as Earth Angel or Ice Cream Changes. And it doesn't change throughout the song. It's those same 4 chords over and over. Apparently, Arc Music Factory charged $1,000 per chord. In the verses, the vocal melody is almost entirely a single note, B, the root note of the key. It's heavily auto-tuned, of course, as all music is now, and there are some moments of ornamentation, but not much. The chorus melody is an oddity, but not quite to Trevor Dunn level. During the main hook of the song, when she sings the word Friday, she is singing the scale degrees 3 to 2. So it's a consonant note resolving to a dissonant note. But this is far from being the least sensible thing about the song. The lyrics are in a style that screenwriters call on the nose, meaning they are literal exposition describing physical things that are happening. There's no abstraction or symbolism happening. It's all concrete. Examples are, gotta get down to the bus stop, gotta catch my bus, I see my friends. And the lyrics don't rhyme at all. Gotta make my mind up, which seat can I take? And we hear many sentences forced into rhythms without concern for matching the accented syllables to the weak and strong beats. The band They Might Be Giants do that sort of thing, sparingly, for sarcastic, comedic effect, but in this case, I think it was just a lack of skill. For instance, at the end of the bridge, Rebecca Black sings, "Tomorrow is Saturday and Sunday comes afterwards." And the word afterwards lands on and is sustained on the 6th scale degree, which does make some mathematical sense because it's a G sharp over the 4 chord, which is an E major, but it makes the non-rhyming and off-accented afterwards sound even more wrong. Now, there is certainly a combination of things that make words or sentences musical or non-musical. Things like rhythm, accented syllables, and the arrangement of phonemes that are pleasant to the ear. I'm sure it varies from culture to culture, but songwriters develop an intuitive sense for it. But the person who wrote this song did not seem to have that. So I'd like to say thank you to Dale Turner for hating this song. Up next we have Karma Police from Radiohead, submitted by Dale Turner's distant relative, Ruth Turner. I'm surprised all of the Turners didn't show up here today. Now, Karma Police is the worst offender of all, consistently topping every list of the most hated songs ever. And for that, I think someone needs to call the music police. Radiohead played this version of the song at about 74 BPM, which we know is the worst of all tempos. No wonder it was so popular in Iceland. Remember what I said earlier about vocalists who emote in a way that their audience can't identify with? Well, this song doesn't even do that. The singer, whoever he is, sings without any hint of emotion. He's basically a robot. But digging into the music theory, it's no wonder people can't stand this song. Karma Police is in a simplistic 4/4 time signature, and even worse, it has a simply incorrect chord progression. Now, when they were writing this song, the Radioheads clearly couldn't make up their minds, because they started in A Dorian, which is a good choice of mode, with A minor, D, E minor, and G. So those chords would be the minor 1, the major 4, the minor 5, and the major VII chord. But get this, for no reason, they threw in an F major chord, which does not work. And anyone who has taken music theory level 1 knows you can't do that, because that would be a flat VI chord, which is a big no-no. And he should get an F for it, because it was an F chord. So then it just goes back to E minor and G in the key of A Dorian, like nothing happened. Are we supposed to just forget about that F major chord? Well, the second time around the progression, it just stays in the key. And man, I was worried about what might happen. Like, what other random non-diatonic chord might they throw in? And then I was thinking, maybe that F major chord was just a mistake, and they realized it the second time around the progression and fixed it. And I would have at least expected the producer to ask them to go back and fix it. Huh. So then when the song gets to the chorus, the drummer just stops playing. And of course, all of the energy drops out, which is a really bad idea, because everyone knows you don't want to do that in the chorus. That's supposed to be the part everyone sings along to, which is why it's called the chorus. And if everyone sang along to it, it would just drown out the band. So they got the dynamics of songwriting exactly backwards. By the way, the chords during this failed chorus are C, D, G, which is, okay, so far so good. That's the key of G major. It's a good choice of key, playing a 4, 5, 1. And it's a key that's at least remotely related to A Dorian. But then they add in an F sharp 7, which would be a VII 7 chord. Okay, what are they thinking there? The good news is the drummer comes back again later. Or maybe he quit because the song was so bad, and it's possible they had a whole line of drummers waiting back there in the studio. Maybe every time they got to the chorus and the drummer would walk off, the next guy would jump behind the kit and try to finish the song, until he quit too. Moving along, not surprising, the bridge has just as many problems as the rest of the song. It uses the chords B minor, D, and G. Now those fit in the key of G, but I don't recommend using those chords in combination. That's because B minor is too closely related to both D and G. In fact, it shares 2 notes with both of those chords. So you don't get enough contrast in the chord progression. It needs a chord that doesn't share notes with the others. So they tried, but they only made it worse. They play a totally out-of-key chord again, an E dominant 7, which is a VI 7 chord in music theory terminology. And as we know, that chord should only appear in the key of A. I would have recommended a C chord, which would be the 4 chord. So my verdict is these guys need to go back to the basics and learn about diatonic keys and which chords belong together. Whoever produced this song, I doubt Radiohead or their label ever worked with him again. So as you can see, this song is full of wrong chords, and that's probably why it crashed and burned. And I would like to say thank you to Ruth Turner for hating this song. Up next we have What's Going On by 4 Non-Blondes, submitted by Christian Bajering, or Bajering, something like that. Well, I will tell you what's going on. This song is actually called What's Up. Well, that's confusing, isn't it? I wonder if they regret that choice of title. You might not know this, but the vocalist Linda Perry has continued her career as a hit songwriter. She's got 5 Grammy Awards, a Golden Globe, and she is in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. But her greatest accomplishment of all is she used to eat at the same time as me at one of my favorite restaurants in LA. Thinking back, I should have screamed at her, "What's going on?" Wonder how often she gets that. Anyway, the lyrics to the song were written about a topic. So let's get into the music theory. The tempo of What's Going On, or What's Up, is 66 BPM. And it seems to speed up slightly as it goes, up to maybe 68 BPM. Okay then, I will let everyone know. This song is in the key of A, which is a good choice of key. And the progression throughout this song is made up of 3 chords. And they repeat and do not change. They are A, B minor, and D. That's the 1, 2, and 4 chords. Okay, now I have to ask what's going on. Where is the 5 chord? This is another song with no 5 chord. We are seeing a pattern here, folks. This is the same problem in Scott Stapp's Marlins Will Soar. So just as a reminder, I am available to consult in writing chord progressions with an authentic cadence. It's actually on my business card. It's also important for the world to know that this song is in a major key, but both the guitar and the lead vocals have ornamentations using the flat 3 scale degree, which comes from the minor scale. It's more that modal interchange again, like when Linda Perry screams, "Revolution." Now, a flat 3 scale degree is commonly a bluesy note and meant to invoke emotion. I don't know what that emotion is, though, because I lack the flat 3 gene. So post a comment or reply if you can tell me what emotion I'm supposed to feel. And I'd like to say thank you to Christian Bajering for hating this song. Up next, we have Last Christmas by Wham, submitted by Dan Rainone. Hey, it's another Christmas song. That means that Christmas songs are officially 30% of the list. So let's examine this one. The tempo of Last Christmas is 106 BPM, which is totally acceptable. But here's the problem. This song is around 50 cents flat. That is, if it was meant to be in the key of D, which is a good choice of key. Or maybe it's 50 cents sharp if they meant it to be in the key of D flat, which is also a good choice of key. But that's right, the whole band is out of tune on this. But we all go out of tune sometimes, right? Or maybe they meant for it to be an artsy microtonal composition kind of thing. Let's assume it is in the key of D because that's probably what they were going for, and it sure is an easier chord to play than D flat. And D flat would have 5 flats, or its enharmonic key would be C sharp with 7 sharps, and that's just not conducive to pop songwriting. Listeners get too confused if you use too many sharps and flats. So the chord progression here would be D, B minor, E minor, and A. That's a 1-6-2-5 progression, which is perfectly diatonic. And it's those 4 chords all the way through. Verse, chorus, everything. 4.5 minutes. Here's some trivia about this song that I found on Wikipedia. Number 1, George Michael wrote, sang, and played every instrument on it. That's pretty impressive. Now, I think he was also credited as playing bass on that song called Freedom 90, if you remember that one with all the supermodels in the music video. Number 2, there was a movie made in 2019 named after and inspired by this song, starring Daenerys Targaryen. And number 3, George Michael actually died on Christmas. Well, that sucks. So there you have it. I can't come up with much to say about this song, except that it is made out of 4 chords and it's out of tune. You know, it's possible that if you had perfect pitch and didn't know it, this song would just sound horribly wrong to you. So maybe that's what's happening. All I can hope is that someone bought Wham a better tuner for their next Christmas. And I want to say thank you to Dan Rainone for hating this song. And that does it for this edition of Why I Hate This Song. I've saved all the other submissions I received for a future episode. So thank you to everyone who sent one in to me. One last thing, a friend of mine, Emin Lerton, made a series of viral videos in the mid-2000s called You Have Bad Taste in Music. And it is required viewing if you call yourself a very good friend of Carl King. I will post a link in the show notes. Okay, that's the end of this episode of the Carl King Podcast. Remember to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere else you listen to these dang podcasts, and support the creation of more episodes by joining my Patreon for $1 or $5 per month. That's patreon.com/Carl King. Or send a tip through PayPal or Venmo to username Carl Kingdom. And as always, special thanks to my $51 a month patrons at the Special Illusionist level, Chubode, and Hank Howard III. And thank you to all of the very good friends of Carl King for listening. And as I always say, okay then, I will let everyone know.